through full introductions. I'm Josh Pope. I'm Technical Services Director at Pima Association of Governments. My phone is going off. And I guess we'll start with the PAG team, and then I'll call on folks to, I'll try to go down the list. So Hinsu, do you want to start?
Yes, and Hinsu No, the Pima Association Government and Modeling Administrator.
Eric?
Eric Cramer, Senior Land Use Modeler, PAG.
Great. Caroline?
Caroline Leung from PAG, Senior Statistical Analysis.
Great. Yunmi?
Yunmi Zhang. Sorry. Yeah. I'm working at PAG and as a data analyst.
Great. And I guess we'll then kind of start just stepping through the list. I don't know how it's going to be organized on your end, but George, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. It's good to see all of you again. My name is George Hammond. I'm director of the Economic and Business Research Center in the Eller College of Management at the University of Arizona.
Great. Thanks for joining us today. Malini.
Thanks. Malini Sims, Principal Planner with the Town of Oro Valley.
Great. Jim.
Jim Chen with the State Demographer's Officer. I'm the State Demographer with the Office of Economic Opportunities.
Great. Mark.
Good afternoon, Mark Holden, Principal Planner with Pima County Planning Division, Development Services Department.
Great. Steve.
Steve Cheslock, I'm the Planning Manager for the Town of Marana.
Excellent. It's great to see everyone. Patricia.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Patricia Pablo. I'm the Grant Writer Supervisor and with the Tohono O'odham Nation, and I'm sitting in on behalf of our Executive Director, Damascus Francisco.
Great, thank you. Thanks for joining us. And I've rearranged it, so I'm throwing everything off here. Mike Qaqc, do you mind introducing yourself?
Hey everybody, Mike Qaqc, City of Tucson, Office of Economic Initiatives, Economic Development and Annexation. And for the record, I am not a planner in any way, shape, or form, just a troublemaker. So
great. Well, welcome. I'm glad you could join us. Hello, co-conspirators here. Sean, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Sean Brown, District Planner for Tucson Unified School District.
Great. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining. We have Anthony.
Yeah, hi, my name is Anthony. I work with the Pima County Budget Department in the Tax Assembly.
Great, welcome. Irma?
It is. I'm the Community Development Manager with the Pascua-Yaqui Tribe.
Great, thanks for joining us. And it looks like we have Corin on the call.
And
hi, everyone. Corin Manning, Planning Administrator with City of Tucson Planning and Development Services.
Great, thanks for joining. Mariella?
Hi, Mirella Hamatka here with Pima County Wastewater. I do capacity planning and long-range planning. For some reason, my camera is not working, so I apologize.
No worries, thanks for joining us. And we have Dean as well.
Dean Trammell, Civil Engineer for the Planning and Engineering Division of Tucson Water.
I can hear, but I don't know if it's...
Great, thanks, Dean. Thanks for joining. Charlene, you want to introduce yourself?
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Charlene Aguila. I'm a planner with the Tohono O'odham Nation, and just like Patricia, I am here on behalf of Executive Director Francisco.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. And Patty Davidson.
Hi, I'm Patty Davidson. I work for Pima County in the Budget Division, Tax Assembly.
Great. Thank you so much, Patty. Thanks for joining us. And Rebecca.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rebecca Theodolis. I'm with the Qaqc tribe, and I'm the assistant tribal planner. I work alongside Ima Yepes Perez.
Great. Thank you so much. Sorry to cut you off. And we have a number of additional PAG technical staff on board, Zonia Kelly, Jeff Hildebrand, and Tiki and Crystal. So we're well covered. Did I miss anyone else that may have joined in, Hinsu?
Maybe Dylan, and have you introduced? And
I'm sorry, Dylan. Dylan,
I'm
introduce
Dylan.
yourself.
I'm the senior planner for the town of Cerrito Planning and Zoning.
Great, thanks.
Elisa, maybe? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I totally missed Elisa.
Right. Elisa Hamblin, I'm the zoning administrator with the City of Tucson's Planning and Development Services.
All right, well, who else did I miss? All right, thank you everyone for joining. This is a great turnout. The team has been doing a ton of work, which you'll get to see a lot of it today. So we really appreciate your time. And with that, I think we can move to the next slide. And I'll touch on in-kind reporting. And I'll just read you this. Regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for, use as much funding for grants and federal dollars. If you're paid with federal dollars, please let us know now. The time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable of the agenda and meeting materials. At the conclusion of this meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in this meeting. And time spent working on PAG RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. So let us know if you're federally funded, and we'll take that into consideration. All right, and with that, we'll jump into our slate of presentations. Employment data update with Eric Cramer. Eric, take it away.
Yeah. Okay, I just want to make sure do I need to see if I can get control here? Okay, all right, I'm just gonna have to be patient here with the delay. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm gonna discuss the 2019 and 2020 PAG employment update. The data for the update comes from multiple sources. We have local surveys that we do with government, schools, and we have the travel reduction program surveys. We also have a lot of information that we use during the review. It comes from external sources like news, Google, Yelp. We even have used the PPP loan database. But the bulk of our data is coming from commercial business listings, such as Dun & Bradstreet and Data Axle. And of course, we start with our existing base data, which is the 2018 state employer database. That's the last verified version that we did. All right. So over the last few years, we've been working to improve and streamline the review process. If you would like to have more detailed discussion of the innovations that we've made, you can read our peer-reviewed publications in the Transportation Research Record. All right, so the update worked from the base data to review and incorporate new information from various sources. So we standardized business addresses and names to help match our incoming data with the existing data that we have. We've also developed techniques to find and evaluate duplicate records. and to verify business existence, and to make our internal process more efficient. This review also gave a lot of attention to business closures, particularly in light of the pandemic and the so-called retail apocalypse, which kind of started around 2017 with chains and mall retail and some big box retail as well. We've also had a fair amount of large employers that left the area during this time. Now, we have our information on business closures is not easy to find, but we did confirm around 300 business closures, around 4,700 jobs. Retail, of these, retail is about 40% of the total closures and job losses. Food and hospitality was around 21% of total closures and 26% of job losses. And healthcare was about 12% and 9% of job losses. Additionally, the review examined employment size and some related factors. We've also looked to verify the NAICS, or North American Industrial Classification System, industry classification for each employer, which is sometimes not easy because you might think it's manufacturing, but it's actually a retail sales office, things of that sort. But we have to choose a single one for our purposes. And then lastly, one of the last steps is a Qaqc sampling review. And this is our results from the 2019 employment data. We had 5 reviewers. Each looked at a random sample of 200 records of roughly about 19 to 20,000 records. And we had a 93% validation of the existence of the records that we finalized. We had a 94% of the NAICS accuracy, and we had about 98% of the employment size. So those are some of the stats for the Qaqc. Now, summarizing the number of businesses by size and the differences between 2019 and 2020, overall we saw a net loss of about 73 employers, roughly 0.4%. The largest losses were for the medium to large businesses, highest in the 16 to 30 category, and which were led by NAICS 72, which is food and hospitality, NAICS 44 to 45, which is retail, and then NAICS 62, which is healthcare services. Net gains were mostly with very small businesses, which seems to support the reports of a surge in small business startups and the gig economy during the pandemic. Now, comparing with the employment, we see a similar pattern with net losses to the medium and large firms predominating, and then highest in the 16 to 30 size category. And again, with the NAICS 72, NAICS 44, 45, and NAICS 62. Overall, their net job losses were about 4.6%. And then again, we see the sort of a net gain in the small employers. If we compare this to the quarterly census of employment and wages, QCW, which surveys state unemployment insurance agencies. We showed that shows a 4.1% job loss, but 1.1% establishment growth for Pima County. So there's some differences there, which I'll discuss in briefly. Yeah, the QCW doesn't include self-employed. Okay. So these are the different NAICS sectors in case we want to refer to them later. So this is a comparison of PAG and QCW employment figures for 2019 and 2020. You'll see, you'll notice some large differences in some categories. Most obviously the 92, which is government, and 61, which is educational services. And that's QCW does suppress data where there are a few establishments to protect against identifying them. But I don't know why they do that for local and state government employment. But it's happened here with the local and state government, and that would include the schools as well. We categorize schools under the 61 category, public schools, as well as charter and private. Another issue is self-employed workers not being reported by the QCW. So NAICS 81, which is general services, could fall into that category, as well as retail, small retail, as well as real estate, 53 real estate agents, 71, which is sort of entertainment. I'm not sure. That's the brackets. It's kind of a speculative guess, but and as well, Arizona is not required to submit multiple worksite reporting with the QCW. So that may mean that you have some data is reported at the headquarters. So that might also account for some of the differences here. I'm guessing that 56, 62, and 42 might fall into that category, but again, that's speculative. All right, so here's a comparison of 2019 and 2020 change in jobs in absolute numbers. And some of the differences also, what previously I mentioned, but may also have to do with the timing. Our data is kind of snapshot data, whereas the QCW is a sort of an annual average of the changes. So that may also contribute to this differences, as well as maybe potential differences in how we classify businesses by NAICS. And here is that same comparison, but by percentage, in percentage terms, between 2019 and 2020. All right, so okay, so yeah, the same differences, data collection, and there also may be our commercial data may have some lag in it as well. That may also contribute to this stuff. Right. So what's next for us? We're hoping to work on the 2021 Dun & Bradstreet Employment Review very shortly. And that will be part of the statewide employment database update. Okay. With that, any questions?
Yes. Hi, Eric. This is George Hammond. So I have some concerns about the QCEW and CES, the current employment statistics data for professional and business services, and especially NAICS 56. And, you know, what we're seeing, at least through June, that sector, the overall professional and business services sector, is still down about 6,000 jobs from where it was before the pandemic began. So that one sector alone accounts for the fact that Tucson through June was about, essentially was about 5 to 6,000 below where total employment was before the pandemic began. So, 6,000 jobs in one sector like professional and business services. And if you look at the QCEW for Pima County, that looks to be concentrated really in NAICS 56. So could you guys well, first of all, do you think that makes sense?
What would you say is contributing to the discrepancy with QCW there?
I don't know. I contacted the Arizona Office of Economic Opportunity and, suggesting, well, I asked them flat out, do you think that the reporting has shifted during the pandemic? So jobs that are actually in Tucson are in fact being reported in Phoenix or elsewhere.
Right.
And they said they didn't think that was what was going on based on their analysis of the wage file.
Yeah.
So it's really weird. It's not clear why Tucson in that sector would completely fail to recover the way it did in Phoenix or even nationally.
Yeah.
And we don't know if it's, other options could be that, automation hit the sector much more in Tucson than it did nationally or in Phoenix. Right. Could be that there was a change in the employment relationship, maybe shifting to contract employees, right? Which would shift them off the UI roles.
Right. It's kind of a sprawling category itself. I mean, it's from everything from office administration to waste management.
Yep.
It's all over the place.
Right. So could you guys keep an eye on that or dig into, see what you think you see in your data for that one category and kind of let me know if that makes sense, because, I think this is going to be an issue going forward because the household employment looks very different. That looks like it recovered, early this year, maybe January, February, if I'm recalling it correctly. So, not that I would rely on the monthly household employment data, but that shows something, or at least through June, I haven't looked at the July data yet, but through June, the household survey was showing something completely different than the CES and QCEW data. So, and the sector that really stands out is performing or recovering very differently in Tucson from, Phoenix and the US is that professional and business services sector, especially NAICS 56.
Right.
With NAICS 56, this is Josh. I'm just curious, with the way QCW is gathering the data, would it be impacted by remote work? Because we have, through our TRP survey, observed that remote work is still kind of holding strong. And expanding a little, particularly for like call centers. And I don't know if that may be reflected in CQEW.
I think it depends on where it depends on where the establishment is with the remote work, right? There's still an establishment somewhere.
Right.
If that establishment is now reported out of state and those remote workers are on the payrolls of an out of state employer, that would account for it.
Right.
Yeah. So Eric also just addressed here is multiple worksite reporting.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So that's what we're thinking. The guys up at Arizona Office of Economic Opportunity don't think that it's been a shift to Phoenix or elsewhere in the state anyway.
Right.
So if you guys could keep an eye on that or look at it, because, it just looks very weird to me. And I haven't seen any, 5,000 or 6,000 jobs is a lot to just not, there's no reporting in the press of giant layoffs. So I'm thinking it's some kind of shift in the way the jobs are reported, or in the employer-employee legal relationship, shifting to contract employee or something along those lines. But if you guys hear anything, or you see anything in your data,
Sure, we'll let
if
you
you
know.
could let me know, that would help a lot.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you, Eric.
Omar, you have a question?
I'm sorry,
Please go
there's
ahead.
a hand. Yeah, sorry.
This is Irma. Just a quick question. Something that
Omar, I think your mic is a little kind of far, and I wonder just if you can speak a little loud or just closer.
Okay, I
That's
just
much
moved.
better.
Let's see if this works. Okay, something that caught my attention a while back, and maybe you're a lot more familiar with this than I am. The Brookings Institute issued an article, a report back in February, that it was the first time that they were able to publish unemployment data for Native Americans. And I'm just wondering if you have more access to some of that data, or if that's available possibly at the state level that you might have tapped into. I've looked online, just to see if there's anything available to the public, but I can't seem to find that. So would you have possibly seen that?
I haven't run across that specifically by ethnicity or but or race, but necessarily. But it's I'm sure there might be something on the Bureau of Labor Statistics site that might be helpful. But I can certainly look it up, do some research if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, I'll share this with you guys, because it really caught my attention again that despite the fact that we've covered and as of this report, it was like 470,000 jobs that have now been brought back. But however, the impact on the Native American community, it has been really bad. Up to 11% continue to be unemployed and so on.
Okay.
I'll share that. See what you have to say.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Eric, for following up on that. And I guess if there aren't any other questions or comments, we can move into the next presentation. Okay. Caroline, great, thank you.
Do I have a control? I don't think I have a control yet.
Caroline, hover your mouse down in the bottom left corner of the slide, and you should see the arrows there.
Okay.
Do you see it?
You mean the left corner?
Yep, the bottom left.
I see control crystal.
Yep, and then there's left and right arrows. So yep, there you go. Perfect.
Okay, I see. Got it. Good afternoon, everyone, and so good to see we have big crowd in this meeting. Okay, today I'm talking about the census, CQR, and PCGKR, which is a follow-up presentation that I've been presented to you in December last year. So I'm doing some update to you guys. Let me explain what I'm going to talk about during this presentation. We'll explain briefly what is a CQR and what is the new program PCGKR and what is the timeline that you need to be aware of. And then I'll show you some examples that PAC have been working on those data review. CQR is a program that have been last several decades right after the census report, it is a process that for the local government to appeal the census data. Hold on, sorry. And this is a program that for you to appeal, to review the census count of the housing unit or of the population. And if you find that some of them is not accurate, not make sense, and you can file the appeal. And this is the process for census to renew the population base so that for the next decade, you can use the new base for different programs such as population estimate, ACS, population projection, such like that. But this program will not address any defensive privacy issues. So if the deficiency is come from the defensive privacy, and Census Bureau will not make any change. So the government units include the tribes, states, counties, incorporated towns and cities can all file the appeal through the CQR for any possible errors. And that last year, December, Census Bureau already sent the invitation to all those government units that you're eligible to file 2020 CQR. What is CQR? Basically, I think sorry about the delay. What's the CQR? CQR, it is, you think that there's some error, and what possible error? There are basically two major cases. One is the count case. That means possible the geocoding problem that you have addressed and Census Bureau geocoded wrong in the wrong county, wrong state, or wrong box, wrong track. So that's possible. You have Census Bureau have the address, but the geocoded wrong in the wrong location. Or the coverage issue, that means missing a house, or there's an address to be duplicate, so they get extra house. So that is a coverage problem. For boundary case, that means Census Bureau get the boundary of the county, of the block, or the city, wrong boundary. And so the house in the wrong block or the wrong state or the wrong county. So you can file the appeal for that situation. This is a new program, PCGQR. I talk about CQR right now. This one, PCGQR, never happened in the past and possible never happen in the future because this new program particularly targeted the COVID-19 pandemic. During the pandemic, a lot of GQ were not counted or missing the population because the GQ operation is supposed to be you get the numerator, come to the facility to collect data. It's a different operation compared to housing unit operation. But because of pandemic, a lot of people not living in the GQ facility or the numerator is not able to go into the GQ facility. So it is the problem that a lot of GQ facility is missing the population count. So Census Bureau have this new program target at GQ. What is GQ? GQ is something that a facility for two or more people living together and they're not related, but they're living in the same housing unit, same buildings. What is available, eligible to consider this case for the PCGKL case, you got to be the GQ facility existed during April 1st, 2020. And also the people are living in that facility in April 1st, 2020. What you mean living there, you got to be fulfilled the residency rule according to Census Bureau. So it's not necessary. Anyone were there in April 1st, 2020 is considered as residents. you have to fulfill the residency rule, which is you can see from the link that I give you. Okay, so anyone that any government unit that think that have some error for the preparations, you can file CQR or PCGKR. And after you file the submission, Census Bureau will review all your documents, and then 3 possible outcomes. One is they find that they are mistake, they make the error, so they will update the population and the housing units. But the update will not change the population, the census report. The new population of housing unit, it will be used as a population base or estimate base for the future ACR, ACS and population estimate program or population projection program, the future programs, but it's not for the report and will not make any change for distribution, redistributed data or apartment data. So that is just purely for future use, population base. Or another case possible is they would find that, no, they didn't make any mistake, so they will not make any change. The third case is they find out that, well, your submission actually is out of scope because there is a problem that the deficiencies come from the defense of privacy, or the GQ facility is not eligible to file PCGKL, such like that. So if our scope, they will not make any change. Okay, this is the timeline. Last December, Census Bureau already sent a document to the government units that you guys can file CQR. And then you guys can actually submit the paperwork and to file the appeal. And then in May, and Census Bureau also sent another set of documents to the government units that for the local government to file PCGQR. And then June 6th, that is the officially, they accept all the cases. And you have another year to file the CQR and PCGKR because the deadline is June 30, 2023. And Census Bureau will have the deadline to give you the result by September 2023 to tell you whether they change it or they found that there's no error. PAC have been using data to do some review for the Census 2020 report. And right now I'm showing you some of our examples. So when we do the report review, we mainly use Census 2010 data and Census 2020 population housing unit to compare. And also we use the whole decade, 2010 to 2020 building permit data to build up our housing unit inventory. And also the GQ information that for a whole decade, we collect major GQ facilities such as the U of A dormitory, big houses, or the jails data, and we submit to the AOEO. So we have a check of the GQ facility population over the last 10 years. So also we have used the assessors housing, the parcel data built on with our building permit data to establish a data set we call it April 2020 housing unit inventory, which is try to compare with the Census 2020 housing unit report. So that is our data set. Of course, when we do the review, when we compare 2010 and 2020 data, we need to do some GIS work because the boundary geography is not the same. In 2010, there were 240 tracts and then 20,000 blocks. But 2020, there are some tracts being split into 2 or 3. So there are 270 tracts. But the Census Bureau did some clean up, so we shrink that to less than 17,000 blocks in 2020. So you can see the boundary of tract and blocks is not the same between these two census. And also when we look to the review, we use the census block data for analysis and to compare with our parcel data from assessor's office. And they are different boundary. Sometimes block is bigger than parcel, or sometimes parcel bigger than block. So all of them, we need to redo some of the GIS work to align up with 2020 block boundary. So after we all do all those work, basically pack the inventory, April 1st, 2020 inventory, we have about 472,000 housing units, but census report have a 470,000. So we slightly a little bit different. We probably work on it. Now I'm showing you some of the cases. All the analysis we do is block level, because CQR, you need to submit the data in block level. You can file more than one block. You can put several blocks all together to file one submission. But all the document, you have to be in block level. All the paperwork, you have to show the data in block level. That's why I'm doing some analysis in block. The first case, you look at that. This is the block, which is where we mow. It don't look like any housing unit, and have no housing unit inventory in this block for April 2020. But census report that 88 occupied housing unit, they have almost 300 population. So it's something that possible geocochically wrong. That is some of the house possible. Maybe is wrong that in the north of the block could be by chance that they geocochically in this block instead of supposed to be north of this street. So it could be possible geocochically is put the house in the wrong block. And this is the similar case that you can see that not really many houses in our inventory have 2 units, but census report have 61. So it's possible you see on the east side of this block, there are lots of houses. Could be maybe some of those houses would be geocoded wrong that put it in this block. That is just possibility. And this is another case that we look into 4 blocks, and there are 4 apartment complexes. But when Census Bureau cut the blocks, and there is one apartment like the Mission Palm is on the middle block, and we have it cut into 3 different blocks. So aligned with some individual housing unit, and some of the blocks is being split into multiple blocks. I mean, some of the apartment complex split into 2 or 3 blocks, which is not aligned with the definition of blocks, because the block definition is supposed to be go with certain features like roads, streets, or county line or something like that. But another important feature is supposed to be go with the ownership. So apartment complex should not be cut into 2 or 3 blocks. So you see that probably something that the Census Bureau need to withdraw the blocks. This is another case. We can see that Push Lake apartment, it is in 1015 block and 1014 block. And then you can see at the bottom, that triangle 1013, that block, it is also part of the apartments. So this apartment is split into 3 blocks. And the triangle with the bottom of that triangle, it is that one will align with other single family instead of go with the 15 or 14 blocks. And so you can see that housing units these two blocks add together is only 11 housing units in one block and 15 housing units in another block. But the whole campus actually is over 400 units. So it's something that probably a housing unit probably missed, or the block is actually cut it wrong. This is another case that we see there's two blocks together. We have about 300 housing units, but Census Bureau only have 68. So probably somehow the housing units being missed. It can be another case that can file CQR. This is what I will try to, another case that the apartment complex, you see the Sundown Village, it is being cut in 3 blocks. Now, we see the bottom of this one. It's supposed to not cut it like that way. Go with another block, so we can look at into maybe we draw the blocks that should not be cut that apartment complex into half. There's 3 blocks in this apartment complex. And you can see the housing unit is not off, but it's the block is off. Okay, I'll be looking into some of the PCGKL. In the past decade, couple decades, there's a new type of student housing coming up, which is apartment complex. But for the students, maybe 2 or 3 students live together. They share, maybe 2 students share one apartment. In the past, Census Bureau considered them as a housing unit, and PAC always treat those student apartments as a housing unit. But in 2020, looks like there are new type, new code of GQ 502, which is for private dormitory. They consider those as student apartment complex as dormitory. So we look at this one here on the left-hand side of this block. Actually, there's a student apartment, so I Luna. They consider, looks like Census Bureau consider this one is a GQ. So you see you have 600, almost 700 GQ population there. Very few housing unit. PAC have 400 housing unit in this block because Census Bureau probably consider they are GQ. So this is the, sorry, my internet is slow. I'm trying to get the next slide. I'll show you another block. Just right beside this block, there's 3 apartment complexes, and they have 400 housing units for PAC inventory. And Census Bureau have 342 housing units. There's no GQ. That means it is inconsistency for Census Bureau that they did not consider, they did not classify those student apartments as a GQ. It's something that probably the city can file that as PCGKL to change the population of the GQ. And then also I have a look into this one, and also is another student apartment, which is also the same situation that missing possible as another PCGKL case. Sorry that I'm trying to change. And this is the GQ. PAC have been collect GQ from the university, and there are 2 quick houses in this block, and we get this 34 and 39 GQ population from U of A for spring 2020. But Census will have 0 population because pandemic. That's why you show GQ, 0 GQ. And there is another block that has 2 quick houses. PAC actually collect from U of A have population, and Census Bureau have 0. And there is another one, 4 quick houses. There's only 9 GQ, but PAC actually collected, there's supposed to be almost 100 GQ pop in this block. This is a summary for the cases that I was working on. Of course, I believe that you can find more cases. I'm just pick up some of the case that I pop my eyes then and show you what in the slide. And we can work on more cases if necessary. So after I show you all my analysis, and you guys can actually work on more potential case that you can file the CQL or PCGL. And PAC is willing to share our data file or shake file or all the spreadsheet that we were working on and to share with you. And if any jurisdiction need to work with PAC to do some analysis or file the CQL and PCGL, we're happy to work with you or to share some of the participant guys from Census Bureau. So feel free there to contact PAC that we can work on more cases. So any questions?
Great. Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, so there was a tremendous amount of work. We've had a kind of initial discussion back and forth with the city on this, as they had a couple of questions. So we look to kind of resolve those issues, and we feel pretty good. These are examples. We do have the data that we feel is a good set of content for you to be able to compare as we're looking at the appropriate timeframes of building permits, completions, and instead of just issued. So we have that. We're happy to share it. We don't feel that slide that we just displayed is the definitive slide of the number of cases, but relative set of numbers out there of ones that we had identified, and we certainly want to work with you as you step through the process, because that's going to be an exercise that your highest ranking elected official is going to need to submit to the census. Is that correct, Caroline?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So that's a lot
we're
of
happy to
documents.
help. We feel like we've set a good stage of these are examples to look for, give you the data, and we can do follow-ups with you. But it is also something that we're going to kind of have to hand off to jurisdictions to kind of take it across the line. So
yeah.
Any questions from the group?
Yeah, after this meeting, we can share with you some of the data files, so
yes,
we can work with you together.
All right. Well, not seeing any. We can step into the next. Thank you so much, Caroline. And the next set of presentations, Regional Land Use Model Redevelopment Module Update.
Good afternoon, PopTech members and the interested parties. And this is the third item today's agenda. And the Regional Land Use Model Redevelopment Module Update. And today is Eric Cramer and Yumi Zhang will discuss together with me and about the two candidate models that we're working on for our redevelopment modules. Introduction. The first, and we are working on our land use model improvement, and especially for developing redevelopment models and using our local data, especially the county assessor's office data in 2010 and 2020. And this portion, the development, the redevelopment module update is a part of our land use model and the development as well. And but the redevelopment module is could be integrated together with either of the current and the SAM, the land use model, or just the future land use model we are working on. As mentioned, and we are evaluating state land use model called AG Smart, and which is based on urban sim, and as working together with MAC. And here's a kind of the overall and the module and the procedure. And the first, I'd like to highlight and between the land use model portion and the travel demand model portion. And this is a kind of a iterative process and dynamically the linking together. And the travel demand model will prepare just the traffic volume, accessibility, and other performance measures in base year, and will be and put in just the inputs of the land use model, and the land use model typically kind of just the develop and for vacant land, and as well as just the redevelopment, kind of just the development included. So this development actually just fed back to just the travel demand model for the forecast year, and then just until just it finishes and reaching out to final year, and the model kind of keeps running. So focusing on just the land use model portion, and as you mentioned earlier, and this is actually just the land development and for vacant or redevelopment. And today we are going to just highlight this green box and for redevelopment. And the land use model actually need and estimate forecast year, regional employment, population, square footage, but also just for the redevelopment portion. And typically, and we need to have just the regional forecast the year redevelopment square footage, and we have to just estimate those using just the inputs of our just for redevelopment module. And after that, just we estimate just the parcel score based on just our variables identified, and just the model was be discussed by Eric and just me. And then just based on the score developed and assigned just the redevelopment and until just the land use and specified, and then just the final just the update and the basic forecast year and the variable data. This is a kind of just a typical just a full step ways of just a redevelopment process. And here's the current development status. And as mentioned earlier, and we have just two models. Model 1 is currently being developed by the Eric Cramer, and the Model 2 is being developed by just you, me, Zhang. And we'll discuss more detailed about the model. And model status, and typically just split just the two and the land use into commercial and the residential. And for Model 1, as a commercial is kind of focused on, and so far just data and the method developed, and there are some just coding works and working together. And the Model 2 is a commercial, is in the middle of just calibration. Is the back and first is just finding out just the good variables based on the data sets. And the residential is almost finished in the validation process. And then just those developed calibration and validation methodology also will be used for the Model 1. And the coding process will be shared with just the Model 2. So this is a little different kind of just a procedure and the Model 1, Model 2, but the final kind of just integrate together to figure out just which one is actually better. We can just pick one of them as the best performed the model. So then just Eric will kind of just share the first model, then followed by just you, me for the Model 2. And Eric, and I can either go through and or just if you want to take it and the Crystal help just Eric to have the control.
I'll have the control, please. Okay, let's see. All right, so the tier-based redevelopment method developed out of our review of the planning literature, particularly literature on infill redevelopment. And specifically, we wanted to look at data-centric approaches to evaluate the opportunities for infill at the parcel level. And this is a rule-based approach, which is you say what data can we use to filter our parcel data. It's using basically we develop a set of measures, and from the literature and plus our own data analysis, we came up with 3 measures. First being floor area ratio, or FAR, which is kind of a proxy for the intensity of development, and here it would be the lower intensity tends to give more opportunities for infill redevelopment. Improvement to land value ratio identifies the undervalued properties or undervalued parcels again, have the ones that have a low value or improvement to land value would have greater opportunities. And then building age being a sort of a general trend of that older properties are sites of redevelopment. Okay, let's keep going. Why the animation's not working here? Okay, all right. So to do this, our method looked at 10 years of commercial parcels or commercial land and 10 years of change from 2010 to 2020. And for each of these measures, we established 3 tiers, high, medium, and low potential. And so we looked for parcels where it's sort of indicator of some kind of development, indicator of where square footage increased on the parcel. We also looked at our known examples of redevelopment, things that we cases that we know are truly redevelopment. We used those cases along with our other indicators to develop statistics for each measure, and then from those statistics we developed these threshold values. So for the year built, our data showed that prior, we broke it down into anything prior to 79 would be tier 1, tier 2 would be 80 through 1999, and then tier 3 would be 2000 to 2009. Anything above anything more than 20 or 2010 or greater would be disqualified from being considered. For FAR, we also developed 3 tiers, and then anything above 0.3 would be disqualifying. And this is partly based on our data, but we also looked at some of the literature and what other folks were doing as well. And then ILV, same thing. We consider anything equal to 0.8 would be disqualified from consideration. So having determined those tier intervals, we now come to classify them. And so to be considered as a redevelopment candidate, all 3 measures must qualify. And then once we have qualified parcel, we sum the tiered rankings for that parcel into a final tier score and rescale to 1 to 7, 1 to 7 scale. And then finally, we need an estimated rate of redevelopment for regionally and also for each tier. So we looked at, we compared the 2010 data with the 2020, and we identified parcels where there was a drop in tier ranking from 2010 to 2020. And a tier drop would show kind of a potential case of redevelopment where one or more of the measures dropped to a lower tier. So something changed there. And when we look at the statistics, roughly 3.4% of the total commercial parcels in the region redeveloped during that period. In terms of the square footage, however, it's about 1.2% on average. So on average, you have smaller building square footage for those parcels than existing commercial parcels. Moving on. So, okay, so next, to apply or to use this is part of our land use model, potentially, to use it to forecast development. We take our regional forecast by square footage for each industry sector, and we combine that with our redevelopment. Let me see. We take the square footage forecast per sector times the redevelopment rate regionally times the redevelopment rate per tier, and that brings us or gives us this table here. For any forecast year, we have the listing of tiers and also by the industry sector and the square footage that we expect to be redeveloped in that 10-year period. So that's in a nutshell the model. Currently, I'm working on trying to integrate this method with our land use model, both the SAM model and also the upcoming parcel-based model that we're using. So I'll turn it over to you and me.
Crystal, would you do in the transfer the control to the Yumi?
Should have it.
Oh, really?
She should have it now.
Okay. Okay. So should I use the mouse to? Yeah, I will use mouse.
No,
Hi.
no, use the mouse to click the arrows.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Got it. Hi, I'm Yumi, and I'm going to present land redevelopment choice model. And here's the contents of today's presentation. First, I will introduce the land redevelopment choice model. Then I will show you develop the multinomial load model, and we can calculate the probability of being redeveloped for each parcel by applying the multinomial load model. Next, as a calibration, land redevelopment choice model is estimated in R, and several model specifications are suggested and compared to find the best model which fits well to the observed land use data. And invalidation, predicted and observed land redevelopment is compared, and the performance of a developed model is evaluated with accuracy measure. Land redevelopment choice model would be the one variation of a special choice model, and special choice model plays important role in solving problems in urban planning and activity-based travel demand modeling. And the most common special choice model includes activity location choice model, residential location choice model, migration model, and so forth. And land redevelopment choice model would help us understand how each land use attributes affect on the choice of location for land redevelopment. Also, we could predict land redevelopment in a future year by applying the estimated model to get the probability of being redeveloped at a target year. And PEC is interested in two building types, including residential and commercial regarding land redevelopment patterns, because the characteristics of residential buildings and commercial developments are quite different from each other. And land redevelopment model is developed by a building type. And here is a multinomial load model for land redevelopment. We can calculate the probability of being redeveloped for each parcel by solving this load model. And in the middle, PIK is the probability of a parcel I to be redeveloped for building type K. And there are two building types considered, as I mentioned, residential buildings and commercial buildings. So by applying this multinomial load model on land redevelopment, we can capture how land redevelopment is chosen based on the utility associated with its alternative land redevelopment. And it is assumed that the attributes of alternatives plays important role in the choice process of land redevelopment because it influences the selection of land redevelopment among alternative parcels with the developments. And the factors affecting on land redevelopments are represented as the coefficient of independent variables in a multinomial choice model. It includes building scale freeze, land size, year built, effective year built, building to land area ratio, sorry, full cash value, building price, land price, and improvement to land value ratio. And in calibration, regarding data, multinomial logic model is estimated using a randomly drawn 69% of land use data, and the remaining 31% were reserved for validation process. And scatter plots of data are reviewed and correlation test is conducted to check whether there are strong correlation among independent variables. And based on the findings from a correlation analysis, several residential redevelopment choice models are developed and compared to find the best model, showing grade with the observed land use data set. And there are over 1,000 parcels in data set for modeling work. And this data set is prepared only for land redevelopment choice model. Actually, the total number of parcels in Pima County is over 420,000. And some parcels without residential or commercial developments are excluded. Also, parcels with the partial information of selected land use attributes are also removed for modeling purpose. So the final data set of modeling work includes around 300,000 parcels. And data set for calibration is separated from the data set for validation. 355 redeveloped parcels are reserved for calibration, and among 355 parcels, 200 parcels are selected for calibration because of computational efficiency. And land use attributes are visualized to check out whether there is a linear relationship between variables. With linear relationship, Pearson correlation analysis would be performed. And if there is a monotonic relationship instead of a linear relationship, it would be better to Spearman's rank order analysis. And according to the scatter plots on the right side, it is better to use Spearman's rank order correlation analysis because we can see more monotonic relationship between variables. So Spearman's rank order correlation analysis is conducted. And here is a chart presenting correlation result between variables. In general, correlation more than 0.6 represents a strong correlation, and it is better to avoid the inclusion of variables having high correlation in modeling work. And the pairs of variables with strong correlations are full cash value and building scale freeze with 0.75 of correlation, and FAR, floor area ratio, and land size with negative 0.66 of correlation, and effective year built, and a year built of 0.98 the correlation score. And here is the base model of residential redevelopment choice model. I put all of the land use attributes without considering correlation score. So it includes building scale freeze, year built, effective year built, FAR, and full cash value, land size as independent variables for residential redevelopment. And based on this model, with considering a correlation score of variables, various specifications of residential land redevelopment choice models are tested. And here is a table presenting the specifications of residential land redevelopment choice model. I tested total 18 models with different combinations of land use attributes to find out the best model without high correlation. And then what would be the best model, or how to determine which one would be the best model. In order to find out the best model among 18 model specifications, I performed several statistical analyses and compared overall goodness of the measure of each model. The first analysis I conducted is a likelihood ratio test. It is good for evaluating whether individual variables should be kept in a choice model or not. And secondly, I conducted a non-nested hypothesis test, and it is very useful to compare two models having different variables. It helps because it helps to judge which model is statistically superior to the other. And for example, according to the test result, non-nested hypothesis test, the year-built building square footage and FAR are better to keep in a model compared to effective year-built full cash value and land size. And after conducting these statistical tests, Model 4 and Model 13 are selected for semi-final models. And Model 4 has a building square footage, year built, and FAR land size as independent variable. And Model 13 includes building square footage, year built, and floor area ratio. And I try to compare Model 4 and Model 13 using overall goodness of fit measure, which is raw scale value. And it is well known that between 0.2 and 0.3 of raw scale value is reasonable for location choice model. And the raw scale value of Model 4 is 0.261 on the right side. And the raw scale value of Model 13 is 0.259. So it looks quite similar to each other, but the Model 4's one is slightly better than Model 13. So I picked the Model 4 as the residential land redevelopment choice model. And finally, I got the residential land redevelopment choice model. And it includes building square footage, year built, FAR, land size as explanatory variables, and each land use attributes is statistically significant according to the p-value on the right side, and the sign of each variable looks reasonable. And you can check out other statistics on including number of observed choices, low likelihood value, and raw scale in this table. And I will talk about the validation, and there are total 514 residential parcels to be redeveloped. Among them, 159 parcels are in the data set of validation. And for validating estimated lodging model, predicted and observed redevelopments are compared, and the performance of model is evaluated with a Qaqc measure. And here is the first part of the validation. The result of residential redevelopment choice models are validated by comparing predicted and observed redevelopment. The calculated probability by a lodging model is considered as a relative index of a likelihood of redevelopment instead of absolute possibility of being redeveloped. And it assumes that a parcel with a high probability is more likely to be redeveloped. And the predicted probabilities are ordered by descending order and select the maximum number of parcels where the total square footage of selected parcel is close to the total square footage of parcels to be redeveloped in observed data. And finally, on TZ level, parcels to be redeveloped according to a model, and the parcels with the redevelopment in observed data are compared to see how much each model outcome matches well with observed data. And in a table below, on a TZ level, the 83% of a model outcome matches well with observed data. It means that the percentage of having both predicted redevelopment and actual redevelopments in the same TAZ is 83%. And for 17% of a TAZ unmatched case, predicted redevelopment and observed redevelopment are in a different TAZ. Further, the performance of residential redevelopment choice model is evaluated by preparing following indices. The sensitivity means that the shares of the redeveloped developments correctly predicted over total number of redevelopments in observed data. And specificity is the percentage of non-redeveloped buildings correctly predicted out of a total number of non-redeveloped in observed data. And accuracy shows how much does the model predict both redevelopments and non-redevelopment compared to observed data. And here is a table presenting 4 classifications between predicted outcomes and observed data. Using these 4 classifications, we can calculate sensitivity, specificity, and accuracy measure. And meanwhile, cutoff value could impact on the sensitivity, specificity, and accuracy values. The outcome of larger model is probability of being redeveloped, and it is between 0 and 1. So depending on the cutoff value, the calculated probability could be linked to be redeveloped or not. And that is because the cutoff value is a threshold value of determining which number will be associated with redevelopment. And so I tested several cutoff values to find out which cutoff value provides the best approximate number of redevelopment compared to observed data. So I have actually in the observed data set, I have 159 redevelopment, and this 159 is between 160 and 235 of predicted number. And the cutoff value is 0.0006 with 235 and 0.0007 with 160. And I researched further the table below, and then I got 0.8 of accuracy, 0.6 of sensitivity, and 0.88 of specificity with a cutoff value of 0.0007. So here is the summary of validation. I applied 2 methods for validation process. First, predicted and observed redevelopments are compared. The list of mass TAZ has parcels to be redeveloped according to a model, and the parcels with the redevelopment in observed data or vice versa. The 80-30% of a model outcome matches well with observed data on TAZ level, and also accuracy, sensitivity, and specificity indices are computed to evaluate how much does the model predict both redevelopment and non-redevelopment compared to the observed data, and I got 0.8 as accuracy. So in sum, 2 methods test a similar concept in terms of comparing predicted outcomes and observed data. The main differences is how to treat the probability computed by the model. The first model uses the probability as a relative index of likelihood of redevelopment, and second method converts the probability to integer type index of redevelopment using cutoff value. And according to these 2 methods, the calibrated model looks quite reasonable since the score of both methods is over 80%. And currently I'm developing commercial land redevelopment choice model. I'm working on the calibration part. The characteristics of commercial redevelopment would be different from the characteristics of residential redevelopment. So I'm testing several model specifications with the additional factors affecting on the commercial land redevelopment. And I will share the commercial land redevelopment choice model the next time. And this all I prepared today.
Thank you, Yumi.
Thank you.
As I'd mentioned, the team has put in significant amount of work since we last connected, as conveyed in the last few presentations. So thank you. Any questions we have for either the redevelopment methods that we're considering? All right, if anything comes up, don't hesitate to reach out. And we'll be sure we're in a good spot as we kind of take on the next task. Do we have the next presentation up? All right. Population projection timeline.
Yeah, actually, we don't have a presentation, and
Okay.
which will be just updated verbally, and I can do it.
Perfect.
And for 2055 population projection timeline, actually just the AO year is the target the year is 2060, but which is relevant to and our just 2055 and the RMAP and the long range plan. To understand about the county and the sub-county and the projection, and I'd like to give some just the background information and our timeline. And AOEO forecast, as you know, just the population projection up to 2060, and as I mentioned, and the AOEO under just the Regional Commerce Authority is a leading, and also just has a privilege to generate the state, county, sub-county population projection, as well as the annual state, county, sub-county projection estimates, and especially the county projections are just estimated in the second, fifth, eighth year of a decade. So in this year, 2022, and we're going to just have population projections for county level, and will be posted by just the December 15th in the 2022. And based on the county projections and the published, and at the end of this year, the sub-county population projections will be developed in the following year, and they're completed by just September 1st in the 2023. And then just also just this is the AOE, so just the product, and but generously just area also just allow us to develop the sub-county population projections, which just we're hoping to benefit for us to discuss closely with you, our jurisdictional partners. And most of the development will be in the first quarter of the 2023. And they're hoping to just discuss the sub-county population projections in either just the springtime or just a little later springtime, March, April, May, and to get the approval from the jurisdictional partners through PopTech meetings. And further down the road, and the projected county sub-county population projection will be used for our just the control tours for and PopTech. I'm sorry, just the 2055, just the all map and the PAC long range plan effort. That's just the update. And do you have any questions about the population projection timeline?
So we're gearing up, and we'll have these land use module elements tightened up in time to be able to implement next spring once we get the county level, work through the county level projections with the committee this November, December. So thank you, everyone. With that, if anybody has any questions or comments, we have, we definitely know we're going to be engaging November, December. We're going to see if we're going to have the need for a meeting prior to that to cover any kind of updates that likely will happen. So we'll give sufficient time to get everybody's schedules lined up. And we greatly appreciate your attendance today. And with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you so much for coming. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.